another foul on board. His third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen.
Pick and roll. And a foul, offensive foul coming up. Ken Valentine standing right there.
Izzo dying for a moving screen.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Moving Screen podcast. I am Brendan Quinn from The Athletic, here with the great Dylan Burkhart of Hoops. It is late Monday morning, December 30th. Hope everyone had a great holiday out there. Dylan, was your holiday especially wonderful, filled with joy and merriment?
It was a great holiday, ready to move past this kind of slow period. I think the best Christmas present might be that Michigan and Michigan State are done playing bye games for the year, and we can move on to real basketball.
Yes. It's that time of year. It's almost New Year. I have a fresh cold, so I'm ready to go. I don't feel like anyone's talking about it, but Michigan State play Sunday. Last year, we had like months of build-up to all we talked about, and this year it's sneaking up and biting us square in the ass. But we will get into that later this week, right, Dylan?
Yeah, my position on that game is well established. I'm all for it. This is going to make the arc of the Big Ten season way better. I'm buying in, even if it'll get people excited instead of all the anticipation, right?
I wouldn't mind.
You'll have
the
anticipation.
I wouldn't mind if it were just after the football playoff shit.
A little sad you're going to miss your Eagles game.
No, I'm talking about college. Because I always feel like on every year it's the national championship game ends and every college basketball writer in the country tweets, "Welcome to the college basketball season, everyone who hasn't been paying attention."
Well,
that's a tradition.
I'm not going to endorse those tweets. So college basketball season started in November.
All right, some quick business to tend to, folks. Make sure you are subscribed to both Hoops and The Athletic. If you want to support this podcast, that's the best way of doing it. There's a reason that this thing is ad-free, and it's because we use it to promote what we do for our actual paying jobs. So subscribe to Hoops. Dylan, what is cooking over there? Michigan coming off a win yesterday over UMass Lowell. I'm sure you're breaking that down, and you have a week worth of content to provide before the Wolverines' next game, man.
Yep, we're going to have plenty of Michigan State build up. Big game, lots of preview content. Also, we're going to kind of do a look back at the November and December performances, kind of by position group.
Ooh, a little self-scout.
Sort of a little midterm self-scout.
There you go.
So stay tuned for that this week, and we'll see what else comes up.
Wonderful.
What do you have over at theathletic.com?
Today, I will have a story up on my runnings around yesterday. Is that the right way of saying it? I don't know. A second straight double dip weekend. Couldn't drag you along for the ride this time, but I was in Ann Arbor for the Michigan UMass Lowell game, was in East Lansing for the Michigan State Western game, and was just trying to kind of collect my thoughts on what this next chapter of the Michigan State rivalry means, what it looks like, kind of some of the storylines in effect here, and that column is going to be published very shortly. So check that out. We'll have stuff later in the week. Obviously, Michigan State still has a game against Illinois, a rather important game on Thursday night. I will be there for that, writing live, of course, and all kinds of good stuff. We have a year-end 50% off deal. You can find all those links on Twitter. I recommend you check there. And join along for 2020. It should be a great year, and I know we are looking forward to providing more content, but more importantly, keeping this podcast rolling. So today, we're taking a look at the league as a whole. Figure it's a good time to reset things, and we're going to draft a power ranker. We're going old school OG moving screen style here. Dylan, are you excited?
Bringing it back to what brought you here originally.
That's right.
I'm excited.
Nostalgia's in the air.
It got a little stale doing it every week last year, but I'm all in on getting back to it. It's really a good time because non-conference play is basically in the books. I know everyone played those 2 league games, but now we're getting into the real thing and lots to unpack, I would say. Last year, I feel like it was pretty straightforward how the league broke down for most of the year.
Mm-hmm.
This year, I have no idea really how to pick my power ranking. So should be a fun one, and I think we'll probably disagree a fair amount.
Yeah. For any new listeners, we literally used to do this every single week on the show where we would ramble about Michigan and Michigan State for an hour and then draft a power ranking of the Big Ten at the end of every episode. These were like hour and 45-minute episodes that were probably pretty hard to listen to. But today we're only doing this. So Big Ten play restarts on Thursday. So it'll be Minnesota.
Before Thursday, right?
No, I don't think so.
No. You're right.
So Minnesota comes to East Lansing and, Minnesota goes to Purdue and, Illinois comes to East Lansing to restart some, Big Ten hoops. As everyone knows, in the conference standings right now, Michigan State's the only team that's 2-0. Northwestern's 0-2. Everyone else is 1-1. And Michigan State's the only team to win a road game, right? Yeah. So
correct.
That's your reset. So we will go 1 through 14. I will pick one team. And this is we're going on what teams that we feel good about right now.
How we feel about the team right now.
How we don't feel good about them, I guess, once we get to the back end of this thing. So, I will be picking number 1, right?
You're picking first. Let's get into it.
Okay, so this was not a great weekend for the league, I would say. 2 teams that you maybe wanted to feel good about, both lost games that were certainly winnable. This being Ohio State and Indiana. You're already squirming.
No. I was wondering who the second team you wanted to feel good about was. I had to look down my list here. I wasn't sure who lost the game.
Well, Indiana was 11-1 and was leading that game by 8 with a handful of minutes to go.
Yes.
Terrible.
And then gave up a 17-1 run. Anyways, who's your first pick going to be? You're really
first pick.
The build up here.
I'm still taking Michigan State. At the end of the day, when it comes to projecting this thing out, and who I would be most comfortable betting on, in a league that's still, we can sit here and hem and haw over a bunch of teams, but the conference has 11 teams in the top 50 of the net. And I think the next closest conference is the Big East with 7 in the top 50. So, we're going to pick apart these teams and only point to their flaws, really. But the Big Ten is, I think, far and away the best conference in the country. But when it comes to who I think has the goods to win this thing, I still would be most comfortable taking the combination of Izzo and Cassius Winston to get things figured out. That said, Michigan State could drop a game or 2 this week. I also think there's a decent chance they go 2-0 this week, and then suddenly everyone's talking about Michigan State as the clear favorite in the league all over again.
So I have a couple questions.
Let's go.
Has Michigan State done something that changes how you feel about them in the last 3 weeks, since that Oakland-ish point in the schedule where you might not have been as high on them?
No. I mean, I feel like I've been saying the same thing about Michigan State all along these last 5, 3, 2 weeks, whatever you want to say. I've just kind of, I think the loss in the Bahamas to Virginia Tech, which is the only kind of head scratcher, Maui, which is the only head scratcher, was pretty much an anomaly. I really don't read that much into Michigan State's performance down there. There was just way too much shit going on. And the other 2 losses are an opening night loss to Kentucky and kind of getting run at home by Duke. But, yes, I understand that Michigan State only has one notable win, that being at Seton Hall. And then they have one okay win over Georgia on a neutral court. Pretty much out beyond that, the resume is bear. This is based way more on personnel, product, and what I think is the safest projection.
Okay. Now, my second point about Michigan State is, so you wrote a story about their 3-point shooting, and I think that was 3 games ago, and they were shooting 31% from 3, I believe that's right. I was looking through your spreadsheets and stuff like that. Since then, they're shooting 43% from 3-point range. Do you feel significantly better about them as a shooting team? Because I have a yeah, but.
Significantly better is not the words that I would use. I mean, I felt that it was going to regress to the mean regardless of whether it was now or later, but the shots were going to start falling at some point. Certainly from Cassius Winston, and he didn't even play yesterday. So getting Rocket Watts back in the lineup add some much needed depth.
We're going back to 3-point shooting for a second.
I'm sorry,
I have a second part of my stat here. So they're 34 of 78 in this new stretch where they're shooting over 40%. Guess who has the most makes in that span, the last 3 games?
Foster Loyer.
Foster Loyer is 8 of 9.
Right.
So is Foster Loyer making threes in bye games changing how you feel about Michigan State in the Big Ten?
No, I mean, I said that the last 3 games in no way affected how I felt about.
Well, okay. So everyone else,
Big Ten play,
other than Loyer and Winston, is just 20 of 57 from 3, even in those 3 games where Michigan State has shot it really well. So I feel like that's 35%, not as bad.
That's still in the uptick,
but it's still not completely changing. Those are the guys you need to make shots if you're Michigan State, right?
Yeah.
So that is, I guess, a little bit of a concern I would have if you're looking at their 3-point shooting bouncing back, because Foster Loyer is not getting 5 3-point attempts a game in the Big Ten.
I would say I'm far more encouraged by Aaron Henry. Looks a lot better in recent games. Looks way more comfortable. Doesn't look like he's just shitting his pants every time he touches the ball. His shoulders are starting to come back up. He's starting to look more confident. I think he's poised to really put things together over the next few months. I think Xavier Tillman is getting better. I think Cassius Winston is going to certainly see all of his numbers rise to levels that would have been expected. I just think they have by far the highest ceiling of anyone that we're talking about.
I see the argument. I'm just pointing out some.
Yeah, no, the shooting definitely is a concern. I mean, there's a reason I wrote that story, because outside of Winston, there aren't any guys that you just immediately circle and say, okay, well, this guy's going to start hitting shots. This guy's going to start hitting shots. Like, everyone else is just about where you. Like, Gabe Brown is maybe a 35% shooter. Maybe that's just who he is, Is he suddenly going to go and shoot 45% the rest of the year? I wouldn't outright bank on that. You're adding a new piece in Rocket Watts, who has already kind of proven to, not be the answer there, but I think he's better than what he was or what he's done, but he still needs a lot to prove. But the defense that he adds on the perimeter, his presence in transition, are all huge additions, whatever you want to call it, to the team that we've already seen. So I thought there were some positives from Rocket last night, in that he didn't, immediately start launching threes the second he entered the game. He kind of did let the game come to him a little bit. He ended up firing a couple in one possession, but, he at least made one. So that's good. All right.
Any other closing thoughts on Michigan State, or should we get to the team who should be number one?
My question would be, how strongly do you disagree with the pick of Michigan State at 1?
I think Ohio State's pretty clearly number 1. Ohio State has better wins, better losses, and fewer losses. I don't think that there's really much argument at this point in the season that Ohio State should probably be number 1. Ohio State beat Kentucky on a neutral. Ohio State waxed Penn State. Ohio State waxed Villanova. Ohio State won by 25 at North Carolina. 3 of those teams are better than Seton Hall. Kentucky beat Michigan State on a neutral. I know that they lost at Minnesota, but Minnesota's a lot better team than Michigan State beat on the road in the Big Ten, right? Northwestern is not telling us much. And West Virginia is a tough team to play. I don't think you can read too much into just falling flat in a neutral court game against West Virginia.
What's their worst loss at Minnesota was without Dwayne Washington.
Yeah. Okay.
He's their best 3-point shooter.
He's good. And Minnesota, and it's a road game against a team that is decent, right? Like those games happen. So I just don't really see the case to put Michigan State above them, other than clinging to what you expected Michigan State to be. I don't think Michigan State's shown to be the team that we all think they can be. And until they do, I don't know about putting them first.
I think Michigan State will ultimately be what we thought it to be. I think much of the last 6 weeks has to do with coincidental circumstances.
That's fair. You want to hear some bad Big Ten scheduling?
Yeah, of course.
When do Ohio State and Michigan State play their first game? The last game of the season.
That's a bummer.
Their only matchup.
Well, I mean, it's easy to say Big Ten. Like, it's not like someone drew it out that way.
I'm just saying it's very similar to how Michigan and Michigan State played all their games late in the year. But it kind of works, I guess, if it's just going to be a single play. So, hey. And Ohio State, the other thing to remember is they have a really easy league schedule compared to some of the other contenders. Mm-hmm. So I would think if I was putting money down, they would be my odds-on favorite, even though there might be a bit of, I don't know. I think they're probably a streak somewhere in the season where Ohio State struggles.
Yeah.
They're 8th in the country in three-point shooting. Is everyone on the team going to keep shooting 40% from three?
I think
maybe
there's
not.
A really good chance Ohio State comes back to earth. And I really like Ohio State. I think it's going to be like a legit 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Like, don't get me wrong here, but
yeah, I think their defense is good enough.
They're shooting the shit out of the ball. They just lost Kyle Young. He's out with injury now.
Appendicitis, right?
It's didn't sound good. I'm not sure. I just saw that he went down. But the combination of Caleb Wesson and DJ Carton is pretty damn good, and all the surrounding pieces. There's a reason that one of the 2 hosts of this show picked Ohio State to finish second in the Big Ten this year.
At what point does DJ Carton play 30 minutes in a game?
I have no idea, and I don't understand why it's not already the case. Do you?
No, but that's a scary thing about Ohio State is they're 11-2, and the guy we think might be their best player hasn't played 30 minutes in a college basketball game yet. Mm-hmm. Pretty nice luxury.
Mm-hmm. He also had 5 turnovers and 3 points in the loss yesterday, so maybe Holtman knows what he's doing a little bit. We'll give him that. All right. Anything else on the Buckeyes?
No, I'm really curious to see who you have picked third here.
My third pick, or ranked number 3 in the league, I will take Michigan.
Okay.
I think, end of the day, is the Gonzaga win still the best win in the conference?
It's got to be up there. I don't know if there's a better road win maybe that you would maybe boost up ahead of it. But yeah, to beat Gonzaga on a neutral, and Gonzaga might be the best team in the country. It doesn't get much better than that.
So I weigh that. I like, in terms of what the premise of this is, teams that we feel good about right now. I really like how tested Michigan is coming out of non-conference play. The only game that really kind of tweaks me a little bit is the loss at Illinois. I think that was the only time that Michigan really looked pedestrian this year. The loss to Louisville is, I just get a pass in my book. I don't see anything wrong with that. And it was one of those nights that if some shots were falling, maybe it's a different thing. If some of those bunnies by Teskey fall, maybe it's a different game, whatever. other than the first 10 minutes against Oregon and the Illinois games are really the only time that I've kind of looked at Michigan with any sense of, I don't know. You know what I mean? I think overall they've been as impressive as, or at times I should say, they've been as impressive as anyone in the country, let alone the conference. And, Liver's injury definitely worries me. And that was the only thing that kind of kept me from putting them at 3. But at the end of the day, I'll take Xavier Simpson and John Teske, and I don't have reason to believe that this Livers thing is something that is going to be, an issue weeks from now.
Yeah, so Michigan played like a top 5 team in November and like a top 50 team in December. Some of that is just the games that you play and what ends up happening, but that's worth pointing out. I think until Michigan wins on the road, you have to kind of put an asterisk by them.
Sure.
Not completely, but until they win one of those road games, you're going to say they can't win on the road. And you look at the first couple weeks of the Big Ten schedule, at Michigan State, Purdue at home, at Minnesota, at Iowa. That's a brutal stretch.
Yep.
That's going to say a lot about this team. And however, whenever Isaiah Livers comes back, how limited he is, Michigan's not really a deep team. And obviously, the last 2 weeks built some of that depth, but that'll be really interesting to see just how they fare. You look, there's some really key games in that stretch, and you're playing 3 of your first 4 here on the road. That's tricky, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we'll learn a lot more about what this team is. I also think this team probably fares better in a stretch where people start kind of doubting them. Going into the Bahamas, they definitely played with a chip on their shoulder. Going to Louisville, I wouldn't say that chip was really there as much, or coming off a celebration and whatever else, right? So really interesting 2 weeks here. I think Michigan could go 3-1 or something like that, and you'd say they might be the Big Ten favorites, or they could go 1-3, and you'd be like, well, I'm not really sure where this team falls, right?
Right. I will be really interested to see what they do in East Lansing on Sunday. You made the point, I don't know if it was on the podcast or when we were, bullshitting whatever, but of how this game tends to have major residual effects on a team moving forward. And, if Michigan loses up there this weekend, it's obviously a big ask to go, win these rivalry games on the road. How much does that ding them? How well connected do they stay? There's a lot. I think there's a lot riding on this game. In term, you made a great point that this thing kind of is bigger than one day.
Yeah, you look back at some recent Michigan seasons, and a lot of them turned with a big win against Michigan State, especially at Michigan State. You look at like the 2018 team, that team basically changed completely when they went and won in East Lansing, and they cruised all the way to the Final Four basically from then. So that game really can change everything. Last year, all Michigan can really think about is losing those 3 games, and that's all people really remember about the season, right? So I don't think you can put too much stock in it, but it definitely feels like an early pivot point in the biggest way since the battle for Atlantis, I'd say. Like we were talking about that, like what's this team going to be? We have no idea. They look mediocre against App State. We just didn't know, right? And now it's sort of another point where we've seen the good, we've seen the bad. Now what's Michigan going to be? Based on how you play at East Lansing, you get a good sense of that, I think.
For sure. And, on top of all that, it's not only the Michigan State game on Sunday, because after that, it's a home game against Purdue, which, can certainly make you play ugly. Then back-to-back road games, Minnesota, Iowa, which will basically be toss-ups, right?
Yeah, and Michigan never plays well at Iowa.
And then a Penn State home game, and suddenly Penn State is pretty legit. Good. Yeah, you don't just kind of mark that W.
And you got to remember, Michigan has only 9 Big Ten home games.
Good point. Real good point.
So It's going to be a difficult league schedule for this team. It'll be interesting to see how they fare early, because there are some chances to kind of get some momentum late, but you're still, even at the end of the year, 4 of the last 6 are away, right? So should be interesting.
All right.
So I have the 4th pick, and I'm torn here.
There's a lot going on. This is where it starts getting real dicey, I think. Did you have Michigan 3, by the way?
I did.
Okay.
I'm really torn here between 2 teams, and I think I'm going to go with Penn State just to keep the podcast spicy here.
Okay. All right.
I've been fairly critical of Penn State at times in the past, especially about Lamar Stevens, but I got a good Lamar Stevens stat here. Last year, he graded out, I have a stat that basically takes the location and type of all your shots and estimates the shot quality, right? Last year, 5th percentile in shot selection. This year, 70th percentile. First 3 years, over 40% of his shots were mid-range jumpers every year. This year, down to 26%. Lamar Stevens is finally taking good shots. Penn State's winning games. I know that loss at Ohio State was ugly, but this team looks legit to me, and I think that they look like an NCAA tournament team, and I'm just not picking Maryland anyway, so whatever. They beat Maryland.
Yeah, the thing that has been jumping out to me about Penn State that makes this team, because the big question that with Penn State is always, all right, what's different? What makes this team different than every other version of Penn State ever that you consider buying in on when they show any glimmer of hope? And one of the things is this Myrion Jones. He's shooting 42% on threes, and that is just something that seems like Penn State. Just because the guys that Patrick recruits and the way that they play, like jump shooting has always just been a wild deficiency in that program. But you have to have at least one guy, right? And like last year's team, it just seemed like that was just a massive blind spot. And, now you have a guy who's takes and makes threes consistently. And that makes life easier on Watkins. That makes life easier on Stevens. It just adds an element to this team that I think might make them different than every other version that we've, kind of been able to poke holes in. And even a guy like Miles Dredd, who's only shooting like 31%, I think.
But he can shoot.
Yeah, he's better than that. So if he gets into that 38% range and Jones keeps shooting the way he is, like this might be a top 5 team in the league.
So I'm a big fan of when a guy transfers out to what he thinks is a better situation, and then the guy who replaces him plays better. So kudos to Jones for taking Rasir Bolton's spot and just being a better version of him.
Yes.
I'm always a fan of that. I mean, they're good, and they've won on the road against decent teams. They beat Maryland. I mean, I don't think you could have drawn up a better November and December for Penn State at this point. I mean, could it be a fool's gold? Sure, but last year they were losing to DePaul and Bradley in November, right? So it's this team seems like a team that I would not want to play, and probably more difficult to prepare for than teams like a Maryland, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
The other name for our Big Ten people out there, a name that I really like to stick in the back of your head is Seth Lundy, who's a freshman at Penn State. Went to Roman Catholic High in Philly, and really good program. He's a 6'6" guy who has, I think, is going to be just a really, really good all-around player for that program. A guy that people are going to be talking about, and will probably do some big things in some big games this year, even as a freshman. So stick that in the back of your head. All right.
Anyone else from Philly you want to give a little personal shout out to?
Well, we don't want to just turn the podcast on its head, but
all right. You have the 5th pick.
I got 5. It has to be Maryland. I don't know, man.
So here's the case for Maryland. I'll make the case. They have 6 top 100 wins, 3 on neutral court.
But like, do any of those wins really, do you think, validate them being that good?
I think they're a good team. I think they're a double-digit win team in the Big Ten. No, Marquette on a neutral is a way better win than Illinois at home.
Marquette isn't that good.
A lot of teams do claim, multiple Big Ten teams do claim Marquette as their best win, but other than Wisconsin and Maryland, they've won all their games. What do you want from them?
I would like them to schedule better, and the same goes for plenty of other teams. But go ahead.
I mean, I think they're a team. They're an NCAA tournament team, and Maryland beat them on a neutral. That's a good win. Is Maryland great? Is Maryland a team that I think can make the Elite Eight? Probably not, but I don't think them losing to Penn State and Seton Hall on the road is enough to just say, oh, they suck now.
Right.
I think you can make a case they should be way higher than this on the list. It's just we have these residual feelings about what Maryland basketball is at this point.
True. The front court depth issue that is now coming up when players leave the program. The Twins, who I guess
we're basically getting.
Was that their last game? Their last game was. This is the Mitchell Twins.
The Mitchell Twins are gone, and then Joel Mariel has arrived. So depends which. I mean, it seems like Mark Turgeon made his choice on that side. So I don't know what you're going to say there. I mean, it's not like they replaced one guy who played big minutes with another guy who they think can play big minutes. I think so. Is it an upgrade, downgrade? I guess we'll see. You don't need that much depth.
No, it's never a great sign when guys are leaving the program in the middle of the year, but it could also be if it was a toxic situation internally, it could also be a good thing. So you never know. I have no idea the inner workings of Maryland basketball. Maybe I'll get Dre on the phone and see what the hell's going on over there. But at the end of the day, it's still a team that's top 25 nationally in both offensive and defensive efficiency. I don't love any of their wins, and I could certainly see it being a situation where if there's a string of losses by Maryland in the year, we look back on their non-conference schedule and be like, well, they never actually, in hindsight, they never really did that much. So, what was that was worth buying in on? Right now, you're just buying in on Anthony Cowan and Jalen Smith and some nice pieces around them. And
those are two pretty good pieces.
Oh, no doubt. But they were pieces that were there last year too.
I'm curious if they start making threes. They have not made. They're 31% on the year. That's worse than they were last year, and a lot of the same guys back who shot a lot of threes. So that'll be something to keep an eye on if they get hot for a little stretch here.
Yeah, I thought Wiggins was going to be a lot better.
Well, sometimes you're only as good as your 3-point shooting percentage. And he shot 30%. What? 41% last year, 31% this year.
That's that.
That's that. But he could easily make 40% in Big Ten play, right?
Sure.
So something to keep an eye on.
Number 6, I'm very curious.
So I'm going with Fran McCaffery's
nice.
Hawkeyes.
That is the right answer.
And I don't feel good. I've picked Penn State and Iowa in these power rankings. If anyone that has followed my takes is probably wondering what happened to me here. I was ranked 5th in the country in December, according to Bart Torvik's numbers. That's probably a bit dramatic, but this team won at Syracuse, lost a shootout at Michigan, whooped Iowa State on the road in a rivalry game, beat Minnesota, beat Cincinnati on a neutral. Maybe none of those teams are great, but those are good wins. Their losses are to Michigan and San Diego State, who are both good. DePaul, who is good, although not good enough to beat you by 15 at home. Right. This offense is going to score, and it seems like they're going to score even without Bohannon. Luka Garza's, would you say he's the favorite for Big Ten Player of the Year right now?
Yeah.
Getting up there. So I don't know. Can they play any defense? No, probably not. They gave up 103 to Michigan and 7. I mean, they shut down Minnesota, though. So,
I think the defense is at least statistically better than the last 3 years.
Okay. But we're going to see what that defense looks like
Yes.
over the course of a Big Ten season. I don't really know that it'll hold up based on everything that we've seen over the past 5 years.
I tend to agree.
Big one on Saturday at the Palestra.
Oh, Penn State?
Yeah.
I should probably get shipped out there and cover that. I think it was pretty darn encouraging that in their first game without Bohannon, after he took the medical red shirt, they went and beat Cincinnati. That's pretty, because I personally was thinking wheels are going to come off a little bit. I definitely think that where things stand, what Iowa's done, the 6th spot is right for them. The only issue with that is that, let's see,
my question,
12 of their 13 games were with a different point guard. It's a different team now.
Yeah, and I feel like McCaffrey is kind of doing some point guard things, even when Bohannon was playing.
That's true.
And I love CJ Frederick. There's always just a dude, like a freshman in Iowa, who can make every shot he takes, but rarely ever dribbles, and he's that guy right now. But who is your guy who can dribble under pressure, right? Like Joe Toussaint stepped in. He got 3 fouls in 4 minutes against Cincinnati. That's not really going to carry it. So point guard is the issue, right? But Frederick and Wieskamp are going to make shots if you can get them the ball. And Garza's a monster. So they're going to be good on offense, even without a point guard, really.
Right.
And maybe playing without Bohannon will help their defense, considering he was running around in a bum hip, right?
Yeah. And quietly, Wieskamp is, I think, on the uptick. I think we talked about him in the pod when we went through all the league picks, and at that point he was basically coming off that stretch where he scored 5 in the loss to San Diego State and then had a poor game at Michigan. Well, since then it's 23 against Minnesota, 13 against Iowa State, 16 against Cincinnati, 18 against Kennesaw State. So not only making shots, but doing so pretty efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Good
you
answer.
Have the next pick at 7?
Hate it. I do. I am going with Indiana.
Oh, my God. That's not the right pick. You're scared to make the right pick.
Well, let's look at it this way. All right. Win over Florida State. Win over Notre Dame on a neutral court, I guess. I don't know. I do like, I don't know. This is where it's like all tossed
They
up.
gave up a 17-1 run at home to Arkansas to lose by 7.
Correct. I'm not picking them 5th in the league. I'm picking them 7th in the league. Talk me out
All
of
right,
it.
sell me on Indiana.
I'm not selling you on Indiana. I don't like Indiana.
So you're picking Indiana ahead of Purdue, ahead of Minnesota.
If I was going to pick anyone ahead of them, I would pick Illinois ahead of them.
Wow.
In terms
okay.
of, in terms
this
of
is going to get interesting.
In terms
here.
of teams that I like the projection of, but I don't know. The times that I do still feel like Indiana's talent level is still fairly high.
So Trace Jackson Davis has been great.
Really good.
Al Durham throws a great elbow.
And he's shooting 39% on threes.
It doesn't help when you get ejected from the game in the first half.
Happens.
What this team can't shoot though, and at
a
this
lot
point,
of teams
it's just
in the Big Ten can't.
It's just a trend. 307th, 311th, now 233rd in 3-point shooting under Archie Miller. I don't know if he's not recruiting shooting. I don't know if he's not coaching shooting. But sooner or later, you have to make shots.
Not coaching shooting was a bold play.
Or not emphasizing shooting.
Uh-huh.
They get to the free throw line as well as anyone in the country. But, man, I just can't get excited
They
about it.
offensive rebound.
Yeah, they're big.
I think they're like Rutgers with talent. There's a compliment to all you
Put that
Hoosier
on the
fans. You know,
They're ranked
there are worse things.
345th in percentage of points scored from 3-point range.
It's not great.
That's not good.
No.
So,
but did you watch the first half against Arkansas?
No, I was driving.
It looked like you watch it and you're like, shit, this is a pretty good team, man. Like, this is an NCAA tournament team. They can go make some things happen. And then they just completely collapsed. I don't know what it's going to take for. I actually think that going to overtime against Nebraska is far more damning than losing to Arkansas at home. But I don't know what it's going to take for this thing to turn around, because while I could sit here and say that the first half against Arkansas is, indicative of a team that could be good enough to play in the NCAA tournament, at the same time, my gut tells me that the last 7 minutes were the real Indiana Hoosiers. Because if you look back at the stretch before this game, they only beat a pretty mediocre. Do you like Notre Dame?
No, in that game, Notre Dame went on a 15-2 run and a 12-0 run in the second half.
So, they were probably a possession away from losing to a mediocre Notre Dame team. They probably should have lost to Nebraska. And before that, they probably should have lost to a pretty mediocre Connecticut team. So they are like a couple bounces away from being on a 5-game losing streak that would probably have us, or have me, ranking Indiana like 10th in the league. But
when I wrote out my rankings, I had Indiana 10th.
Okay.
All right. Next up is, where are we at?
It is worth pointing out Indiana is 11-2.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Okay. That's literally why their schedule was created this way, to try to create some false hope. I think that's just sell. Just get off while you still can on Archie Island. I've learned that the hard way. I'm going to go with a bit of a recency play here at number 8. And I'm going with Minnesota.
Wow.
Great win over Ohio State. Beat Oklahoma State. I think that was in it was in Oklahoma City, so almost a road game. That's probably too high. We're going to have to talk about Purdue, but
there's no terrible losses. They
played a really hard schedule early and fell behind the 8 ball, but I think they're trending the right direction. I think they're a team that can go 500 in the league, and that's really where they're ranked, I'd say, right?
Yeah.
I have a stat, though. The Minnesota's the team I wanted to see them play the most, and just see what happens these first couple weeks, and they could completely tank, or they could be a decent team. Daniel Oturu is 3rd in Ken Palm's all-conference team, little ranking early on. Been one of the best big men in the
beast.
league.
Yeah.
My Marcus Carr splits are pretty incredible, and they make me worried that there might be a bit of false hope here too.
Mm-hmm.
So in their 2 wins against Clemson and Ohio State, Carr scored 59 points on a 68% effective field goal percentage. In every other game, he's averaging 11.9 points per game with a 37% effective field goal percentage. So either he could be this dominant player and he's just trying to get there, or maybe they just he played out of his mind for 2 games, right?
Yeah.
So his efficiency from the guard spot, he's doing a lot, but his ability to make shots kind of determines how good this team can be, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, pretty low key, but Minnesota has 3 of the top 15 leading scorers in the Big Ten. And I don't know if you polled the average fan if they could name any of them.
Someone drafted Marcus Carr on their moving screen fantasy team. I'll point that out.
Did you take Oturu?
I did
That's
not.
the pick. He's a monster. 2nd in the league in scoring, 1st in the league in rebounding, 2nd in the league in field goal percentage. He's just been a complete beast. Probably very underappreciated so far. We'll be kind of curious to see what he actually does in league play, because if he goes and is doing this, against a John Teske, against a Jalen Smith, against a Luka Garza, so on and so forth, Caleb Weston, whatever. First of all, it'll be the last year you see him in the league, and second of all, like Minnesota will be legit.
Yeah, and Minnesota has played the toughest schedule to this point, 21st overall for KenPom, which gives them a little bit of relief on that 7-5 record, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So you are at 9.
Well, I'm getting worried here. All right. Well, now I'm going Illinois.
Oh my!
What? You're going to take Purdue over Illinois?
Yes.
Oh God.
But let's
one team can at least score the ball sometimes. So, all right, let's look at Illinois. So what are we putting them at? 9th?
You are putting them at 9th.
They did beat Michigan, who we have at number 3 in the league. The losses are at Arizona, at Maryland. Okay, all clear there. And by the way, 1 point away from a win at Maryland. Just a disastrous loss to Miami at home when they fell behind by 1 million early on. I was most kind of disconcerted by the loss to Missouri. It was on a neutral floor. Missouri is not very good. I still think Illinois is trying to figure out how to play with the pieces that it has. But at the end of the day, I like most of the pieces. There is, you want to talk about upside in the league, between Kofi Coburn, Ayo Dosunmu, Trent Frazier, Georgie Bashadashvili, like, those are pretty nice pieces. And I will say this for sure. No one particularly wants to play Illinois on any given night in the league. Okay,
I completely agree that no one wants to play them. I don't think anyone's going to have to worry about playing them in the NCAA tournament, though, because their non-conference was disaster.
Spicy.
Their best non-conference wins are Old Dominion and Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
They played the 318th toughest non-conference schedule.
Not great.
And lost any notable game. What do they have to do in the Big Ten to even be in the NCAA tournament picture, right? Like, do they get in at 500?
First of all, I think the league is probably in position to get 8. Does that sound right?
Yeah, but if there are a bunch of teams tied at 500 or around 500, Illinois has done nothing to get the benefit of the doubt. I agree they're a tough scout, you don't want to play them, but they're also an extremely bipolar team. Really no consistency from game to game as far as offense, defense. I can't buy into them. They're
all over the place. I totally agree. KenPom projects them to finish 17-14 and 9-11 in the league. If that's what they are, sure as hell are not going to the NCAA tournament. Probably need to go 11-9. Are they capable of doing that? Yes. Their schedule sucks for them. It's starting this Thursday at Michigan State. But
if you had to bet on a Big Ten team that isn't Northwestern or Nebraska to lose 6 games in a row this year, who would it be?
Wisconsin followed by Illinois. Or wait. Wisconsin, Indiana, Illinois in that order.
Okay. Illinois just seems like might be that kind of team. It's worrying when you don't get a consistent effort, right? Like when you go and you play Miami at home and you just get run off the court at home, and then you can play really well and beat Michigan. But man, it's just the consistency for me that is worrying.
And shooting. It's another one. I'm picking
another
all
team
these
that
terrible
literally
shooting
can't
teams.
shoot. Yeah. They're maybe the only team. They're basically in the exact same boat as Indiana as far as they don't take any threes. They don't make any threes.
After the win over Michigan?
I thought they could be decent. I mean, their non-conference was still an issue. I think they'll beat some teams. They'll beat teams that you expect to compete in the Big Ten this year. I could also see them losing to Nebraska. on a bad day, right? They're that team for me.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. And I mean, and there's a reason that they're 9th in this power ranking. All right, number 10. I think I have a guess.
I can. There's a lot to unpack with Purdue at number 10. First of all, Purdue's 12th in KenPom nationally, and we're picking them 10th in the Big Ten. Last year, at this time, Purdue was 8-5, and its best win was over Davidson. They were not good, and we had this exact same conversation. Said Carson Edwards a shot jacker. They can't do anything else. They're not going anywhere. They ended up going to the Elite Eight and shared the Big Ten championship. I'm not going to go and say they're going to do that, but it is certainly telling that they accomplished that last year with a similar start to this, right? Second point is they are one of 3 teams in the Big Ten to score less than 0.9 points per possession in 4 different games this year. The other teams are Nebraska and Rutgers. That is not what you want to do. There's been 30 games where a Big Ten team didn't score that or scored less than 0.9 points per possession, and Purdue has 4 of them. So this offense, I mean, it has no floor. It can completely fall flat.
Here was where I really, when you talk about feeling good about a team, Purdue already lost at Nebraska. After a home, they play Minnesota at home on Thursday night. After that, their next 4 league games are at Illinois, at Michigan, Michigan State at home, at Maryland. All right, so last year, Purdue got off to a 10-2 start in the league. I think they built all that momentum, and that helped the turnaround. That momentum was built with win over Wisconsin, Rutgers, Indiana, Ohio State.
Well, look, would you be shocked if they won if they went 3-1 in those first 4-game stretch?
Yes.
I mean, they're going to be favored in at least 2 of those games, or at least a pick. Would you be shocked?
I don't know why they are favored at Illinois. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Because one team has Matt Painter as its coach, and another team has Brad Underwood, and that factors into the KenPom.
In a league where there's 1 road win so far, I think you need more rationale than that to pick anyone as a favorite on the road in a game that's relatively even. I mean, look, I like the fact that Purdue wins with defense. It's a lot easier to bet on a team that wins with defense than, me picking bullshit teams that can't shoot 30% on threes, But I just think it's a talent level thing. I just watch Purdue play, and there's just some possessions where you're just like, my God, could you put someone on the floor who can dribble, shoot, score, do something? They are just, last year, Carson Edwards was taking 25 shots a game sometimes. And there was a reason for it. And Matt Painter's maybe the best coach in the league, and he let a guy take 25 shots a game because he knew that team, without him taking 25 shots, is this year's team.
Yeah. I can't get excited about it, but I can't really sit here and say that this is a good power ranking if we have Purdue 10th. Purdue's not going to finish 10th in the Big Ten. I guarantee you that.
Well, that's fair. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I don't love them. And I know every time anyone picks against Purdue, you just wear that egg on the face. But it's hard for me to get excited with anything that's there. Okay. Number 10.
You're up on 11. No, 11.
11?
Right?
Sorry. Yeah, 11. We're going out to New Jersey, Dylan.
Ooh.
That's right. Rutgers. Coming off back-to-back wins over Wisconsin and Seton Hall. Pretty good. When I saw them in person at Michigan State, they didn't have much of a shot in that game and whatnot, but they were not run out of the gym. They weren't dominated. I still think that they have some decent pieces to live up to my kind of hopeful projection of an NIT season for the Scarlet Knights. But I think they're going to be a tough out. You want to talk about a team that no one wants to play? Rutgers is the definition of it, especially at the rack. I just think this is a team that is good enough to go 9-11 in the league. 8-11 or 8-12 maybe. But like if you can't sell me on taking Wisconsin over Rutgers when Rutgers just beat Wisconsin. I certainly don't think Wisconsin's done enough to sell me on them. So Rutgers it is.
Yeah, Rutgers, the gap between Rutgers and other teams below them is as big as it's ever been, I think. Mm-hmm. They're closer to the middle of the league than the bottom, which is an accomplishment in itself. Another team that can't shoot seems to be a thing you have here. But I hate overreacting to a home win against another team. It's really easy to do, and I think I said the same thing about Penn State and Maryland. And it's really easy to do when you go through power rankings kind of like this. But, I mean, the Seton Hall win, good win. No one's surprised by that. I think I called them as the Kings of New Jersey a long time ago.
You did.
So kudos to the Scarlet Knights for backing me up there. Like, I look at the Tuesday game they played next week against Penn State at home. That's the kind of game will tell us a lot about both teams, right? Same with even Rutgers at Nebraska, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those games sort of in the middle, like that'll tell us, is Nebraska really a team that is going to win 9-10 games, or is it more of a 6, 7, 8 win team, I think.
How about Rutgers loading up for Big Ten play by playing a non-D1 tonight?
I got to stay healthy, get loose, and dive into conference play.
Yeah, I mean, top 30 nationally in defense. You know, they defend the hell out of the ball. They rebound really well. And the rest, you just have to hope that you can make some shots on any given night. 28% as a team on three-point shooting is damn near impossible at Division I level. But here we are. So, I don't know. I'm guessing you're taking Wisconsin on 12.
I am going with Wisconsin 12th.
Sell me on taking them over Rutgers.
They won a game on the road. And I know Tennessee is not really in great shape, but to win by 20 points away from home in a game you're an underdog still says something, I think. I think it shows a little bit of a ceiling for this team. They beat Marquette, who's better than anyone that Rutgers has beaten. I just like the program stability with Wisconsin. I think they expect to win more games than Rutgers, and that can sometimes push you ahead. Does that make sense? I mean, miserable basketball to watch this year. I'm not excited to watch Wisconsin at any given point, but they're going to grind out some wins, I think.
Was that game versus Tennessee, is that a home and home?
I'm not sure. You're the former Tennessee beat writer here.
I mean, I would hope not. What a terrible schedule that would be. Who the hell would schedule Wisconsin in a home and home? Miserable. But anyway, okay. I mean, I see what you're saying, and if you can certainly pick pieces on Wisconsin's roster that at least seem like Big Ten, mid-pack Big Ten caliber talent. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Is that a category of player?
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't have to work that hard to justify picking Wisconsin. What are we at, 12th?
12th. Well, sorry. I just don't like the makeup of that squad very much. But, all right. This is where it
gets good.
This is the good stuff. This is what you've all been waiting for. Final spot. At 13, I have to pick Nebraska.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I know. With humility, I pick Nebraska. For anyone not following along in our season bet, you want to explain that one, Dylan?
We bet on which cellar dweller would finish ahead of the other. I took Nebraska. Brendan took Northwestern. I will point out that Northwestern is the only team not to win a Big Ten game. And Northwestern is the team that lost to Hartford at home last night in a game that Hartford shot 19 of 24 in the paint and Northwestern shot 11 of 26. One of those teams is a Big Ten team. The other plays in the America East.
Well, let's just also point out, it was only a week ago that Old Nebraska lost to North Dakota from the Summit League at home.
Yes,
so
they bounced back and came out sharp against Texas A&M Corpus Christi.
They did put that W right on Texas A&M Corpus Christi. But
so the final score is Nebraska lost 3 bye games, and Northwestern lost 3 bye games.
Wow.
Merrimack, Radford, and Hartford.
Barn burner.
So
and Nebraska's 3 bye game losses were UC Riverside, Southern Utah, and North Dakota.
Not great.
So in terms of why I would pick Nebraska, I would say number 1, they beat Purdue. Number 2, they still have a legit home court advantage that basically gives them a fighting chance in a lot of games, whereas Nebraska, I don't feel good about them going into any game. Nebraska's going to steal a couple games at home. 100%.
Yep, I think it's the most underrated venue in the Big Ten.
It's awesome.
And I also just think there's more ceiling for a team figuring it out under a new system than falling lower and lower under an old system. I have more hope that Nebraska will get better considering where they started this year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Think it's too harsh? Look, they have a new head coach who's implementing his system. I just like the upside of Nebraska better than a team that we've just seen get worse and worse and worse.
The old for what it's worth, Ken Palm projects Northwestern to finish 5-15 and Nebraska to finish 4-16, which I do believe would get me. What did we bet? Did we bet beer? I still need my steak dinner, by the way.
Need your steak. It's true. I'm trying to make up some ground here in our action.
You can go double or nothing odds. I'll eat 2 steaks.
The good news is they play home and away, both teams, so we'll get to the bottom of this straight up.
January 11th.
No one's getting out of this with an easy schedule.
That is the game. January 11th in Evanston, Nebraska. Northwestern. Is that no? Oh, they go full home and home.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
And that game, that could be a real big one for Nebraska to steal one on the road if we're trying to inch ahead here.
Okay, I'm going to give you Nebraska's home schedule the rest of the way. I want you to tell me which of the potential NCAA tournament teams that I name are most susceptible to getting picked off at Pinnacle Bank, okay? So their home schedule the rest of the way is Rutgers, Iowa, Indiana, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Ohio State, Northwestern.
I think you look at a lot of those games, they have a real chance. Rutgers, Iowa, Indiana, Michigan, Penn State. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they win 2 of those.
Okay.
Right, are there any of those you said they have no chance? Wisconsin, Northwestern. Look at all those. I can see, 3 or 4 home wins, 3 or 4 more home wins, easy.
Easy is probably a big word.
It's hard to say that.
I would maybe take it down.
When I look at all the L's on the KenPom projection profile here, but I think they'll have a chance in a way that I don't think. I think you.
It is worth noting Nebraska's 6-7, but 3 of its losses are on the road: Georgia Tech, Creighton, Indiana, and one's on a neutral court to George Mason.
And I think you can throw away those 2 November losses because that's a brand new team, brand new system, brand new players.
What do you do with
Right.
the North Dakota loss?
Use it as motivation.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Do you have anything else on Nebraska or Northwestern?
I do not. I'm excited to get into Michigan State, which we are going to do later this week. And so make sure
if you
come
want
back for
an
that.
hour and 15-minute podcast about ball screens, this will be it for you because Dylan is really, really juiced up.
That's what the people want.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least they'll have to find a new podcast if they don't.
Oh boy! All right. Okay. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks for listening. Of course, Dylan, we kept it just to just over an hour. Pretty good. Subscribe to Hoops, the best place that you'll find for exclusive Michigan only content. You don't have to deal with me, at least even dabbling into Michigan. There's no Michigan State on Dylan's site. It's
accurate.
Fully dedicated. So Michigan fans, be sure you're checking that out and subscribing to it. And then also subscribe to The Athletic, which has, at this point, I think more college basketball coverage than you can find pretty much anywhere in the country. So check that out and rate, review, subscribe to this podcast, tell your friends about it, and we'll be back to you guys on Friday with the mega preview for Michigan State. Until then, take care of yourselves and be sure to tip your bartenders and servers.